Hello, and thank you for joining this Timeclock Plus training recording. So, this training is called our manager training. And what we're going to be going over in this training, really, when this training takes place is, we'll assume that at this point, the software has already been configured. Your employees have been entered in, and your employees have already begun to clock in and out. You've already started tracking their time, and now you need to actually access and view and start managing your employees' time. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at today, what you as a manager need to know in order to start keeping up with your employees' time. So right here, we have the Timeclock Manager application open. And this application is going to be kind of like your mission control center for all things Timeclock Plus. This is where you can go to log in and start viewing your employees' time that they've been working. And it is a browser-based application, so you'll be provided with a URL that you can use to access it, along with your login credentials. So this is just a training environment that I have set up, and I'm going to enter in the credentials that I have for my training account. All right, and now we're logged in. So you want to start actually viewing the time that your employees have worked. The best place for you to go to do that is going to be the Individual Hours tool. So you'll go here to the Hours menu, and you'll choose Individual Hours. Now here, inside of Individual Hours, you have your list of your employees over here to the left. You can highlight one of them to view their time over here to the right. Now, this is where you can go to see when your employees clocked in, when they clocked out, how many hours they worked in a segment, how many hours they worked during the course of a day, how many hours they worked throughout the week, what job code they were clocked into, if they went on a break, how long that break was. All of that good stuff will show up in here. In addition to being able to view that, you can also start managing your employees' time. And by managing, I mean making changes to your employees' hours. And to do that, what you're going to need to do is, actually, you know what, before we get into how you can start making changes to your employees' hours, I'd like to make a quick disclaimer. Any kind of changes that get made to your employees' time, whether you are adding, editing, deleting, approving time, whatever the case may be, Timeclock Plus will always keep track of those changes that are being made to your employees' hours. And there's a full audit log for that. So you never have to worry about anyone going in and making changes to hours that shouldn't be made, because Timeclock Plus is always keeping track of who made what changes, when they made those changes, where they made them from. All of that information is tracked. So let me show you an example of some of the changes you might make to someone's time. Here we have someone who clocked in at 8 a.m. on Monday. Well, if I needed to edit this time, let's say maybe they actually came in earlier than that. Let's say maybe I had a meeting with them this morning at 7. We could change this time, right? We could go ahead and just right-click on this, and we could choose Edit to make a change to that. You know, maybe I told them, you know what, just come straight into my office for this meeting. We'll talk, and then, you know, you can just clock in whenever we're done, and I'll change your clock-in time. Well, then we can edit this, and I could change this to, say, 7 a.m. And then we hit Save. And there we go. We made a change to that time, and of course, Timeclock Plus is tracking that change for us. In addition to editing time, you could even delete time entirely. Now, if I hit OK, this shift would show up in my audit log. You know, I'd be able to go in there, and it would still be archived in there. So it's never gone completely, but it's gone from individual hours, which means they're not getting paid for this time. It's not very often that you're going to need to delete hours, and I'm not even going to delete this shift. I'm going to hit cancel. Really, one of the only times you would need to, say, delete hours would be if maybe you added a shift and you needed to remove that and start all over. That's a situation where you might need to delete time. Speaking of adding time, that's something you can do as well. And you do that just by clicking on the Add button here. So now, whenever I click on the Add button, you'll see I have this Add segment window. Now, you could add a full shift with a beginning and an end time, and you can specify the job code that someone was working in. That's great for, like, maybe you have someone who is traveling and they didn't have access to a device that they could use to perform clock operations with. You know, maybe someone just straight up forgot to clock in and out one day. It does happen sometimes with some people. You know, adding a shift manually is great for situations like that. But most of the time, if you're adding hours for someone, it's going to be one of two situations. You're either going to be like clocking someone in on their behalf, or you're going to be entering in leave time for someone. And if it's one of those two situations, really you're going to want to use one of these two boxes up here towards the top left. So if you're clocking someone in on their behalf, you'll probably just want to check individual is clocked in right here. You can check that, and then we can specify a clocked in time. We could say, all right, 7 a.m. This is, once again, like the meeting example. Maybe I called someone in for an early morning meeting, and what I told them was, you know, when you get to work, just head straight to my office, and whenever we're done, you can just get straight to work, and I'll enter your time in for you. I'll enter the time in that the meeting began. Well, then I could come in here, check this, and you'll see I'm able to enter in 7 a.m., and I don't have to enter in a timeout because I'm just clocking them in. So now, this employee, all they have to do is clock out at the end of the day. Or if you're doing leave time, I would actually suggest checking this box right here for timesheet entry. And now, instead of having to enter in a time in and a time out, you can just choose an anchor time and the amount of time that someone took off. So, like sick time. Let's say someone called in sick today. What we could do is we could choose today's date, and we could say, all right, this person came in at 8 a.m. And we can do 8 hours, or a full day. We could do like 4 hours for a half day of sick time. And there we go. Now, as soon as I hit save, this person will have 8 hours of sick time for today. But what if they don't just need today off? Right? What if this individual called in this morning and said, hey, I'm sick. I'm not going to be able to make it to work. And also, I went to the doctor yesterday, and he told me that I have the flu. And because I have the flu, he wants me to take off tomorrow as well. Well, now you need to enter in 2 days worth of sick time. So instead of having to enter in each one of those days manually, you could just choose 2 days from this drop-down box right here, and then hit save. And there you go. You got 2 days worth of sick time right there at the bottom. So, once again, this is the individual hours feature, and this is where you're going to be spending most of your time inside of Timeclock Plus. And I would say you have 3 major responsibilities here inside of individual hours. Your first one is what we just looked at, viewing and managing your employees' time. That's item number 1. Item number 2 would be approving your employees' hours. And the process of approving your employees' hours is basically just your way of like electronically signing off on someone's time and saying, I see these hours, I acknowledge them, I don't see any discrepancies here, and it's okay for this employee to be paid for this time. So what you can do is you'll see here we've got the manager approval column. And you can ignore this one with the O. That's for other approvals, and we're not going to deal with those today. But if you, as a manager, need to approve your employees' hours, all you got to do is start checking off these segments one by one. And that's, like I said, you're just saying, I see this time, there's nothing wrong with it, this employee can be paid for this time, I'm signing off on it, I approve of these hours. You can hit apply changes, And there you go. Boom. It's been approved. Or if you looked at all of these and you determined that there's nothing wrong with them, you could click on the column header right there at the top and approve them all at once. So that's how you can approve time. That's your second responsibility here inside of individual hours. And the third responsibility that you have here in individual hours is you need to keep an eye out for any exceptions that show up on your employee's time. Specifically, any exceptions that are showing up in red. Those are exceptions that require your immediate attention, and you need to get those resolved because your employees cannot be paid until the exceptions that show up in red have been resolved. Just like how your employees can't be paid until their hours have been approved. Now, you'll actually see two different types of exceptions underneath this exceptions column. Some of them are going to show up in blue, and some of them are going to show up in red. Now, these blue exceptions, that's just a flag letting you know there's something out of the ordinary here, and you might want to know about it. Like, for instance, here we have a blue exception. We hover over that. We can see this means this individual has some overtime this week. And that's fine. That doesn't require you to do anything. It's just a flag letting you know. But sometimes you will see red exceptions, and those are the ones that we're really talking about. And you can see we actually have one right here. In this case, it's a missed out punch. And that's actually the most common type of exception you're going to have. Now, once again, you just hover over this to see what it is. In this case, we have a missed punch, which means we have someone who forgot to perform a clock operation. Now, the way we know what a missed punch is, or the way Timeclock Plus recognizes a missed punch is anytime someone forgets to perform a clock operation, Timeclock Plus can tell that they did because they performed the same clock operation 2 times in a row. In other words, right here we have someone who came back from lunch, or clocked in, if you will, last Friday at 1 p.m., and then they forgot to clock out. So whenever they tried to clock in this morning, Timeclock Plus saw that they were clocking in, even though they were still clocked in. So because they effectively pressed that clock in operation 2 times in a row, Timeclock Plus just assumes that they meant to press clock out somewhere in between those 2 operations. And in this case, the employee was able to specify what time they intended to clock out that Friday. That gets passed down to you, the manager, in the form of an exception, and now you have to choose how you want to handle this missed punch. Now, if 3:30 doesn't sound right to you in this specific scenario, right? If you were at work that day and you know they left a little earlier or a little later than that, and you want to change that time, all you've got to do is just right-click and choose Edit and change that time. And as soon as you hit Save, it'll both change that time and approve the exception. But if this looks good, then you just need to approve the exception. And you can do that by just highlighting the segment, clicking on the Exceptions button right here, and where it says Missed Out Punch, you can change that from Unapproved to Approve. Hit Apply, and 2 things are going to happen here. The first thing, 1, you can see that timeout changed from blue to green. We can see up here this legend lets us know green means it's been approved. And also, this exception was showing up in red, now it's showing up in blue. Now, whenever we hover over that, there is still a missed out punch attached to this. And that's because that missed punch did happen. It does still exist. But the fact that it's showing up in blue lets us know it's been approved, it's been signed off on, it's not going to cause us any kind of problems. All right, so that is how we can resolve exceptions. So once again, this is individual hours, where your 3 main responsibilities are viewing and managing your employees' time, approving their hours, and keeping an eye out for exceptions. Now, in addition to the individual hours tool, which is called such because you are viewing your employees' time on this per individual basis, we also have the group hours tool. Group hours is going to allow you to view all of, or a large group of your employees' time all at once without having to sort of manually cycle through your employees' time. So let's take a look at group hours. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. And the first thing you're going to notice whenever I open this up is no hours actually show up in here. And that's because the first thing you need to do is actually set your date range up here at the top and then click on Update. Whenever you do that, you'll see all of your hours for all of the employees that you have access to within that date range. Now, you can manually sort of set this date range here. You can use one of these preloaded date ranges. Maybe you want to view, this pay period or last pay period's time. That's fine. I'm actually, by default, it's set to open weeks, and that's the one that I like. It shows you everything from your current week up here towards the top right until the end of the week that you're actually presently in. So this gives you kind of an up-to-date total of all of the hours for this pay period. Now, whenever I click on Update, it's going to show me all of my hours for all of my employees within that pay period. But if I wanted to only view certain employees' time, I could click on Employee Filter and sort of manually pick and choose who shows up in here. Maybe I want to filter by department or location. Maybe I just want to manually pick and choose a few employees who've been giving me a hard time lately. I could do that. You could even do like a job code filter. So maybe you just want to see hours worked in the sick code, all the sick time that's been taken. You could do that. I'm not going to set up any filters, though. I'm just going to leave this set to open weeks, and we're going to click on Update so we can view this time. And you'll see, whenever we do that, now we can kind of scroll down this list and see all of our employees' time without having to shuffle through those hours. Now, like I said before, there are everything you can do here in individual hours, you could do here inside of group hours. You can edit time, delete time, things like that. Some of the advantages of using group hours, though, are, one, you can sort of easily start signing off on your employees' time one after the other without having to shuffle through them. Or you can continue to use these column headers. If you have a lot of results, they'll be paginated out, 100 per page. You could even click on the column header at the very top to approve those first 100 results. Move to the next page and do the next 100. Make sure that you're actually viewing the hours, of course, if you do that. That's one advantage, is it makes approving individual segments a lot easier. But the thing that I actually really like here inside of group hours is the ability to sort of more easily keep an eye out for these exceptions that show up in here, right? So you can do that using the exception filter. So let's say I have, 500 individual segments in here, but I just want to see the missed punches. Well, what you could do is you could go through this list and you could just check missed punches. Hit filter and it's just going to show you those. Or better yet, if you were to come in here, and this is probably, by the way, the most useful thing we're going to look at today. If it was the end of the pay period, you could come in here and you could check required for payroll exports and reports. And you could hit filter. And what's going to happen is it's only going to show you those exceptions that are showing up in red, the ones that need to be dealt with before the end of the pay period. So I could check that and hit filter. And now you'll see, like, I've just got this missed punch. And as you start to deal with these, I'm actually just going to delete that segment. They actually will disappear from this screen. So what you can do at the end of the pay period is you can come in here to group hours. You can open up the exception filter and check this box, required for payroll exports and reports. And everything that's going to stand between your employees and their ability to get paid by your payroll department will show up in here. And you can just start resolving those until eventually this screen looks like that, and there's nothing showing up in here. And once this screen is empty with that filter applied, you'll know that you're pretty much well on your way to allowing your employees to get paid. You're not going to get any emails from payroll saying, hey, someone still needs their hours to be approved, someone still has a missed punch, something like that. Instead, you'll know everything's been dealt with, and you're good to go with about one exception. There's one more thing you're going to want to do before the end of the pay period, and we'll take a look at that next. But this is going to cut out about 95% of the problems that you might run into at the end of the pay period. So that is the exception filter. Now, one more thing that you might want to do before the end of the pay period exists in a different feature in the software, and it's actually a pretty useful feature in and of itself. It's called Employee Status. So we're going to go there next. We're going to go to the Tools menu, and we're going to choose Employee Status. Now, here, inside of Employee Status, you'll see this is a tool that just kind of allows us to keep like real-time tabs on what all of our employees are up to. So you'll see, like here on the All tab, we can kind of just scroll down and see like who's clocked in, who's clocked out, who's on leave. But we can use some of these individual tabs to sort of more granularly view some of this information. So we can like choose the Clocked In tab to just see who's clocked in. If we click on break, we can see who is out of the office today. Or I'm sorry, who's on break, rather. If we click on not in, we can see who's out of the office today. On leave, if anyone's out sick or taking PTO, they'll show up in here. You can see what someone's last punch is. You can even see, like, in real time, how many hours someone's worked today, how many hours someone's worked this week. This is a really useful tool. I like this because you could, like, sort by the amount of hours that have been worked. So if someone maybe calls in and you need someone to come cover their shift for them, you could come in here, see who's worked the least amount of time this week. That's probably the person who's most likely to want to come in and make up some of those hours. You could call them. But really, the main reason that I want you to see this feature is because of the Clocked In tab. If it's the end of the pay period and you want to make sure that your employees are going to be able to be paid, one thing that could stand in between payday and that happening is you can come in here and sort of sort by time in to see who's been clocked in the longest. Every now and then you're going to see someone who's been clocked in for a little too long, right? Maybe a few days, maybe even a few weeks, but most importantly, what you're going to see is that they're still clocked in for the pay period that people are about to be paid for. Now, hopefully all that means is that someone, left for vacation and they forgot to clock out on their way out the door. But what it might mean is that someone was let go of or they left the organization. And if that happens, what you're going to need to do is make sure that you enter in this individual's timeout. And you can do that pretty easily by just right-clicking on that individual's time and choosing Clock Out. And so we could choose the date. We could enter in the time. We could say, yeah, they were gone by 1 p.m. Hit Clock Out. And now you'll see they no longer show up in the list. So that is one more thing you're going to want to do before the end of the pay period. This probably isn't going to happen often, but it's going to happen often enough that I would make sure that you make this part of your process at the end of the pay period, in addition to using that exception filter inside of the Group Hours tool. Okay, now everything we've looked at up to this point really has to do with like managing your employees' time and maybe making changes to their hours. But I want to show you something else, a little sort of different, which is how you can run reports. So all you got to do is go to the Reports menu, and underneath that is Period Reports. Now, here inside of Period Reports, the process of running a report is pretty simple. You've got your different categories of reports over here to the left, and you've got different reports to the right underneath those categories. I'm going to run the complete payroll report, which is our most comprehensive report, and it's also our most popular report. Now, it can feel a little bit overwhelming whenever you're here inside of period reports to see all of these different reports. You probably already have an idea of like what your ideal report looks like, and you just want to know which one is closest to that. So I wanted to suggest, if you ever want to just use sample versions of our reports, you can go to our website, timeclockplus.com, click on Explore and choose Sample Reports, and you can view different reports that we have in here. Just click on them, and you can see a preview. But once again, I'm going to choose Complete Payroll Report. To me, this is the most essential report. What this report is going to do is it's going to give you a per-employee breakdown of all of the hours worked by your employees on that per-employee basis within this date range that you specify up here. So once again, we need to choose the date range that we're running this for. And once again, I'm going to choose open weeks. Now, just like group hours, by default, whenever you run this, it's going to show you all of the hours for all of your employees within that date range. You can click on Employee Filter if you want to pick and choose which employees show up in here, just like before. Or the Job Code Filter if you only want to view certain job code hours. Maybe you just want to see all the PTO. I'm not going to set up any filters, though. We're just going to run this. Now, you can download a report in a variety of different formats, HTML, PDF. OpenXML is a file type you can open up inside of Excel. Each report has its own individual group of settings. So these are report specific. The complete payroll report, this is a really comprehensive report. So it's got a lot of different check marks in here. If you were to choose, say, the overtime report, you'd probably only have 5 or 6. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fine-tune this. Like maybe you want to include the department that people are in at the top of the page. You could do that. You know, export code, we're not using those, so I could uncheck that. And we'll hit Save. And once you've got this report fine-tuned the way you want it, you can hit Preview to just see what it looks like, or Print to send it straight to your printer. I'm going to hit Preview and show you my whole screen here so that you can actually see this. And there we go. Now when we zoom in, you can see this gives us a per-employee breakdown of all of the hours worked by that employee within the date range that we specified. You get these weekly totals, and you even get a nice job code breakdown here at the bottom, so you can see how many of these hours were worked inside of each code. And you can even get some signature lines there at the bottom. So if you have someone who's maybe constantly sort of arguing about the hours that they got paid for, you can have them manually sign off on their hours before you run that payroll. So that is the reports. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to press that. Okay, so now there's just a few more features that I want to show you before we wrap this up. The first one is the request manager. So your employees, whenever they're at the clock, yes, they have the ability to clock in and out, but you can also give them the ability to keep track of their time off. So optionally, you can actually store your accrual balances inside of Timeclock Plus. So whenever they're at the clock, they can see how much time off they have available, and they can choose to, using that information, like they could see, hey, I have 40 hours of sick time or vacation time available to me. Using that information, they can also enter in their own time off requests. Even if you don't track accrual balances, they can still use Timeclock Plus to enter in time off requests. So if they want to take next Friday off, they can submit a time off request. And that request gets passed down to you, the manager, kind of like Miss Punches, and you can choose to approve or deny that. So let's take a look at the request manager. So you'll see in here now we have all the time off requests that have been entered in for this period. Some of these have been approved, some of these have been denied, and some, like this one right here, are pending. And the pending requests really are what we want to focus on. So to approve or deny a time off request, all you got to do is right-click on it. And you've got these two options here on the bottom. Approve request level 1, that just means all it takes is one manager to approve this time off request, and they're getting the day off. And then deny, that just means that you're denying it, and that's all it takes. They're not getting that day off. So I'm going to approve this time off request because there's a few different things that happen whenever you approve a time off request, and I want to take a look at those. So we're going to approve this. Hit OK. And now we can see this time off request has been approved. And so we can see this time off request has been approved. The employee themselves, whenever they're at the clock, will be able to see that this time off request has been approved. And in addition to that, the time that you approved off is actually going to show up in this employee's hours. So if you go to individual hours or group hours and you pull up this individual's time and look at the 21st, you'll see they have 8 hours of paid time off entered in for that day. So that's another thing that is just kind of useful. And even if you delete this time off request, if this employee comes up to you tomorrow and says, hey, turns out I don't need that day off after all, when you delete this request, it will delete that time from their hours as well. All right, so there's just 2 more features that I want to show you, and then we'll wrap this up. And these are real quick. The first thing I want to show you is a tool inside of the software called Quick Links. Quick Links is a feature that will allow you to just kind of create a bookmark for any features that you think you might be using often. Timeclock Plus is a very feature-rich piece of software. It can feel a little overwhelming. There's all these different menus and sub-menus. But Quick Links will allow you to sort of easily and quickly browse to any feature inside of the software right away without having to look for it. You may have already noticed that each feature inside of the software has this little star icon next to it. I'm going to click on that, and when I do, keep your eyes right up here to the right of the configuration menu. We'll click this. And now you'll see we've got this My Quick Links menu. And when I click on that, the Request Manager shows up underneath there. Any features you want to be able to browse straight to because you know you're going to be using them often, or frankly, if you ever stumble upon a feature that you think is going to be useful in the future and you don't want to forget where it's at, just check that button and you'll have a shortcut to it right up there at the top in Quick Links. And then the last thing I want to show you is the first thing we saw whenever we logged in today, and that is your dashboard. In addition to being the first thing you see when you log in, your dashboard is also your home page, so you can access it really quickly at any time by clicking on the Home button. What the dashboard is a series of interactive widgets that you get to define. And these widgets will just allow you to see kind of in real time what's going on inside of your company. So this is just the default dashboard right here. And once you've been using the software for a little while, you'll get a pretty good feel for which ones of these widgets you do and do not need to see or use on a daily or weekly basis. And whenever you're ready to start fine-tuning this dashboard to meet your own needs, you can click on the Edit button. So here, in the dashboard, we can kind of see the raw data for what's going on the dashboard. Now, you can fine-tune this by, you can drag and drop widgets to different areas of the home page. You could remove some of these widgets entirely using this red X in the top right. You can color code these widgets. You can rename them. Each widget has its own individual groups of settings and options, kind of like the report, so you can fine-tune each one to your own needs. And you can even add new widgets entirely onto the software or onto your home page using these drop-down boxes. I'm going to add a couple. I'm going to add this employee status widget. I'm going to move this up here. I actually like to sort this by clock status, so it prioritizes people who are clocked in or on break to the top of the list. And I'm going to add one of the fun ones. I'm going to add this job code breakdown. And we'll hit save. And so now you can see I've kind of fine-tuned this dashboard to meet my own needs. Actually, let me do a couple things so you can really get a feel for how this works. I'm going to create a mispunch real quick for someone. Let's see. We're going to say this person clocked in yesterday, and they didn't clock out. And we're also going to create a time off request for someone. There we go. And now we'll create a missed punch. Mark that message as read. Continue. And there we go. So now you can see these missed punches are showing up in here, and so are these pending time off requests. So, like missed punches, you could click on Jump to Group Hours, click Update, and it's just going to show you your missed punches. Pending time off requests, you could choose to approve or deny those right here from your home page. Not only can we see who's clocked in and who's clocked out here on our dashboard, but we could type in someone's name to see what their specific status is. When someone's approaching overtime, they'll show up in here. Once they've reached overtime, they'll show up down here. And the job code breakdown widget, you can hover over pieces of this pie chart to see how many hours have been worked in each one of these codes. You can even remove some of them entirely by clicking on them down here. So if you really take the time to fine-tune this dashboard to meet your own needs, it can be the most useful tool inside of the software for you. You can take a lot of your daily tasks, put them right here on your home page. As soon as you log in, you can get a lot of this work done right here from your home page, and then you can just log back out. So let's recap, since that was a lot to go over. The main place you're going to want to spend your time inside of Timeclock Plus is individual hours. Everything just loads a lot faster in here. And your three main responsibilities in here are going to be viewing and managing your employees' time, approving their hours, and keeping an eye out for any kind of exceptions that show up. You could do some of that in mass here from group hours, but the main thing you're going to want to do from here is at the end of the pay period, you're going to want to open the exception filter, choose required for payroll exports and reports, hit filter, and resolve these exceptions until this screen is blank. Employee status allows you to keep track of your employees in real time. Use the clocked in tab to make sure no one's still clocked in for the pay period people are going to be paid for. Reports will just allow you to view like specific information regarding your employees' time. Make sure that you're keeping up with the request manager and you're making sure all of your pending time off requests are either approved or denied. And quick links in the dashboard just kind of help tie everything together. All right, that's everything I wanted to go over today. Thank you very much for joining us for this recording, and I hope you have a good time using Timeclock Plus. Thanks.